You're trying to put the kids to bed because you need to do X, Y, and Z after they go to bed. And it's like, okay, guys, don't come out of your room. And they're like, but what if there's a fire? I'm like, yes, of course. What if a bad guy breaks in? I'm like, that doesn't happen here. They're like, never? Has a bad guy never driven through our town ever in the history of our town? And then I'm like, where am I? How did I get here? Okay, so record the intro now.
So what is Milkless? Because I think we start with the name.
Two dads, we love our kids, but then we also need them to know that we're like pretty cool and it's not like a wimpy podcast. So, hey, Milkless.
Hey, welcome. Hey,
Milkless. Call the audience, Milkless. What's up, Milkless? Max coming at you.
What if that's it? That's our first take. On this episode of Milkless, we're going to be talking about how your absolute favorite people in the world, who you love more than life itself, really, really get on your nerves a lot of the time. Why does that happen? How do we avoid it? While still acknowledging that being a parent is sometimes annoying, and that's fair. Max and I are both trying to get better at this. We could get better at this. We hope to get better at this. Here we go.
All right, Matt, today we're talking about getting annoyed when your kids drive you up a wall. I mean, I think all parents relate to this. This is like a serious trope from among parenting. How do you want to get into this today here, Matt?
What do you mean? I've never been annoyed with my children. They're angels.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, I think we're going to spend a lot of the episode talking about the ways you try to avoid this feeling of being annoyed with your kids and the ways in which, like, a lot of times when you experience your kids as annoying, it's actually more about you and what's going on with you. But before we do all that, we should acknowledge that kids can be really fucking annoying. And that if adults did a lot of the things that your kids did, you would not hang out with them. So there is, like, you know, the incessant questions, sometimes the flat just refusal to, like, put on, can you just put on a shirt? You know, like, there are things that kids do that drive you up a fucking wall. I can think of a handful. I'm sure you can think of a handful. Do you have any good stories that you really feel like are illustrative of the way the kids get to you? I
mean, like, where they look for exceptions. You know, sometimes, especially if you have a time constraint, you're trying to put the kids to bed because you need to do X, Y, and Z after they go to bed. And it's like, okay, guys, don't come out of your room. And they're like, but what if there's a fire? I'm like, yes, of course. They said, but you said under any circumstances. I'm like, yeah, okay. If there's a fire, but that's it. And they're like, what if I split my head open? I'm like, yes, that too. Come on, guys, come on. And then, like, if you're injured, of course. And they're like, what if a bad guy breaks in? I'm like, that doesn't happen here. They're like, never. Has a bad guy never driven through our town ever in the history of our town? I'm like, God. And then I'm like, where am I? How did I get here? I'm just trying to say.
Oh my God.
And that's where, like, if I'm not mentally prepared for this, that's when I snap at them. I'm like, I just said, don't come out of your room.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, cue the parental guilt. I just yelled at them here. I mean, it's
so often, like, it is about, like, this conversation has gone on longer than I can fucking handle it. You know what I mean? It's like, whether it's they keep asking why, or, you know, my daughter will just lobby kind of incessantly for, like, but what if, like, I just have one bite of ice cream and then later, like, I only have half the normal ice cream, like tomorrow. And, like, I will find myself, I say, like, I cannot continue having this conversation. And that fucking sucks, man. That's not a cool thing to say to a kid.
No, and that's why it's like, and it's also, we had talked about it in one of our other episodes that, like, something that's really insidious for children is unpredictable behavior on the parent's part. Mm-hmm. So if, for example, like, sometimes I'll entertain this and I love it. I think they're so creative because, honestly, think about it. You want a kid that challenges authority.
Yeah.
You know, that actually is a sign of intelligence, and it probably sets them up to be a good adult. Like, our kid one time when he was like 5 loves knowing, like, how many these things are there in the world. And I'm like, I don't know, like 10,000 or so. He's constantly obsessed with numbers. And one day at bedtime, they always come up with the questions at bedtime. It's like, why don't you ask me this at breakfast, man?
Yeah.
And he's like, how many people have a foot for a hand? I'm like, none, dude, none. And he's like, none. I'm like, okay. There's probably one person that has a foot for a hand. And he's like, well, actually, if there's one, there's probably at least 50, right? in 7 billion.
Oh, fucking great point, by the way. Smart kid.
He's like, if there's one, there's at least 50. And I'm like, and I couldn't help but smile. I'm like, you're right. It's probably 50. I'm like, great question. Great question. The next night, he's like, how many dinosaurs are buried in Utah? I'm like, go to bed.
Yeah. Just out of nowhere, right? Yeah.
Right. So it's like, when it just keeps coming.
It sucks.
The other thing that always gets me is when you tell them something and then they do the exact thing that you've been telling them not to do.
Uh-huh.
Like, that's a real tough one for me. Like especially, and this is where I'm really fucked up. If they're having fun, let's say we have 3 kids, two of them are hysterically laughing, and then one is doing a high-pitched scream laugh, like on purpose to be funny, like laughing so loud, piercing my ear like a little snake is tickling my eardrum. Mm-hmm. We're like, oh, hey, bud, oh, guys, you guys are having so much fun. Listen, try not to scream. And it's like, ah! And I'm like, okay, yeah, too loud. It's like a little loud. It's like hurting. Try not to scream. And like 4 times go by, and then eventually it's like, bro.
Yeah, I know. There is a thing that, like, dude, comedy for kids is like directly correlated with volume.
Oh, yeah.
If one kid just spontaneously screams as loud as they can, it's the fucking funniest thing any of them ever heard. And that's hard to deal with as an adult. There's like a physical thing that happens in your body when you are suddenly surprised, especially like in a car or in the bathroom. Those are the 2 places where it's just like, do not fucking scream in here. Like, you cannot scream in here like that.
Yeah.
You're frying my nerves. And it sucks because it's like, yeah, they are just having a good time. It doesn't bother them. It's really about me. It bothers me.
Yeah. And talk about me, talk about you. I mean, the problem is sometimes I actually like sickly, sick, disgusting feeling as a parent where you kind of like want them to fuck up.
Yeah, you're watching them because you know.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck is that all about? Where it's like, they eat a bowl of cereal and be like, can I have a second bowl? And it's that I know they're going to pour too much on the second bowl, but I'm like, don't pour too much because you're not going to eat it. I'm like, I got it, Dad. I got it. I should literally just intervene here and be like, buddy, let me pour it. Deal with that 5 minutes of doing the right thing. But instead, I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Don't pour too much, though.
I know.
It overflows. Then they can't eat it. And then I'm like, see, bud, see what I told you? And it's like, developmentally, I knew that they wouldn't be able to do that. Like, yet I kind of let them set themselves up for failure and then like was sickly, wanted to rub their nose in it. What's that about?
I don't know. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. There is this feeling where it's like, if you just listen to me, your life would be so much easier.
Yeah.
One of the things that my wife and I always say is like, can't you just trust me ever?
Yeah.
Like, what has led you to believe that I'm an untrustworthy character in your life?
Nothing more annoying than like, I want to go have another baby carrot. And it's like, and they're going towards the fridge. I'm like, oh, I just checked. We're all out. I just want to look. I'm like, yeah, but I swear.
I know.
Don't go in there. And he's like, I just want to look. Jesus fucking Christ. Like, contain yourself. Like,
yeah, just trust me.
Go ahead and look.
Yeah, it's true. But it's hard. Like, there's this, I think, constant push-pull for kids between needing you so badly and also needing to continually assert their independence in greater and greater and greater ways.
Yeah.
So when you tell your kids like, hey, remember to do this way because that's the only way it's going to work. And I'm pretty sure I've told you fucking 11 times.
Yeah.
And then you know they won't. And you're just like, okay, so this is just going to be harder for you. And ultimately, usually like harder for me too. Because they like can't clean up the cereal well.
Right.
Like that's your problem now too. So there's like this desire to say, I told you so, which is so fucking gross. And I remember as a kid, like thinking that was like petty of adults. It's like, why do you need to say that?
Yeah.
But then you find yourself doing it. Yeah. And you find yourself getting annoyed about that kind of shit.
Yeah. The thing that I'm most embarrassed about is when I know that I'm going to be heading towards and I told you so, and I let them fuck up, and not in a way that they're learning, just in a way so that I can tell them like, see, bud, fucking told you.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't ever want to be that way, you know?
You don't want to be that guy. Yeah. Yeah. But they can be really fucking annoying. It is annoying to like, I mean, one of the things that I'll run into with my daughter is she'll be like, you don't know more than me. And I'll be like, what the fuck are you talking? I know so much more than you. But that's hard. That's a hard truth for her. But it's annoying to have somebody just like ignore you and then do something that is not going to work and you know it's not going to work. But then you get annoyed at them for asking you too many questions and trying to figure out how it works. It's like,
I think also if your child is like relatively intelligent, you expect more from them and you forget that they're like 7 years old or 8 years old or 9 years old or 5 years old. And that's where we run into trouble, where it's like, wow, you're really good at math and reading and doing this. And then like, here's a weird thought experiment. Let's say you met a 35-year-old adult who was special needs and then they were doing like annoying shit. You wouldn't be like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
It's like, no, you'd be like more patient and like.
But if you were their caretaker 24/7 for their whole life, you might at some point.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like some of this is just the war of attrition. Eventually you want to be a perfect parent, but you're a human being. And like human beings are like prone to frustration and often petty. And like there are all these ways in which we're just so deeply fallible. You feel yourself going toward it, and then there you go, It's especially something that you've said in the past, like when it's the same shit over and over. It's like weird. You have the same, neurons have been firing, so it's like a smooth groove in your ape brain, where it's like, I know when we're going to the car, the two older kids are going to fight over who gets middle. Yeah.
And I'll hear like, I call middle, and I can feel it starting to build in me.
Yeah.
And it's a fight every time. And I say the same shit every time. It's like, well, why don't you just take side? You get the window then. They're like, I want middle. You had it last time. And I'm just like, guys, George is getting upset. George is not having a good time. It's like,
oh my God.
I know that that's coming. And it's almost like I'm ready to get.
Yeah, the fact that you know it's coming like makes it worse. Yeah. I do think you get, traumatized isn't the right word, but like my daughter was really, really hard to put to sleep, has been really hard to put to sleep for a lot of her life. Mm-hmm. And then we were like, let's take melatonin. And it's like I fucking shot her in the ass with a tranquilizer. Like she went from an hour and a half of like just doing gymnastics in bed to like 30 seconds into the book, she's just out. But you can't do melatonin forever. And so we were like, okay, we're going to try to wean off it. And the first night we weaned off it, she was a little fidgety, but she was really trying.
Yeah. And
like after like probably 10 minutes of me rubbing her back, she just rolls over and she's like, Dad, could you keep rubbing my back? I'm not tired yet. But I had gotten used to my 30-second bedtime. And I was just like, my hand's tired and it's bedtime. I was like, what the fuck is wrong? Like, that is a sweet little girl who is trying in earnest to go to sleep. And here I am just being a total fucking prick. So I think that you're right. It's like those grooves get worn deep and then you get triggered by them. I mean, ultimately, like what it is, it's like I've dealt with this so many times. I know it's hard and I don't have the energy to do it. I mean, so often when I get really annoyed, it is less about the behavior of the kid and more about the circumstances in which it happens.
Yeah.
Tired is maybe number one. There's a great line from, you remember The Departed, that movie The Departed?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. And he's seeing the therapist, the psychiatrist that he ends up sleeping with, ethically questionable.
Yeah.
But she's like, why is the last patient always the hardest one of the day? And he just goes, because you're fucking tired and you don't give a shit. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
The end of the day is always hard. Like, I get annoyed at the end of the day more than the beginning. If you haven't got enough sleep, you get annoyed all day. The other big one for me is if I'm trying to accomplish anything.
Oh, yeah. You're trying to multitask, and then that's where you get the, hey, Dad. Yeah, give me a sec, but Dad. Hey, give me a sec. Hey, Dad.
Jesus Christ. Jesus fucking Christ.
The thing I'm really trying to do, and I've only done it like once, maybe twice, something I really try to avoid, is like doing the shaming character attack sort of thing. Like being like, dude, you are so annoying, dude. Like that coming from the person that they like love most and respect most. And meanwhile, like the person I love most too.
Yeah.
And I'm talking that way to them. I haven't done that in a while. It's like, we know, it's almost like golf. Like, like how to hit a birdie, but still hard. Like, you know the things you need to do.
Every time I hit 3 good golf shots in a row, I'm like, I figured it out.
Yeah.
Solved golf. And then I shoot 120 again.
Right. So we have it in us to be that parent we want to be.
Yeah.
It's when you take your eye off the ball and start to maybe think that like the world is happening to you and you don't have the choice. Like, oh, well, categorically my children are annoying, so I am, authorized to snap at them.
Yeah.
That's where we run into trouble. Because if you stepped out and looked at it from a third party, you'd be like, dude, take a second and be like, hey, bud, can you give me like 5 seconds? Because I'm actually just doing something and I'm just trying to finish this up. And then I'm going to grab you. Okay. Why don't we ask Alexa to set a 2-minute timer? Give me 1 second. Let me finish this and then I'll be right with you. Mm-hmm. As opposed to like, no, give me a sec. Give me a sec. Give me a sec.
Yeah.
You're basically doing the same thing back to them. Dad, give me a sec. Dad, give me a sec.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone's got to break that cycle.
And it's got to be you. Like your kids, I think like frequently I count on my kid to like, will you just be the adult in the room? And it's like, nope.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what you were saying, it made me think 2 things. One is that if you can, in that moment, take a breath, and goddamn, taking a deep breath. I know I've said this before. It's really good. And I do it not often enough. But when you take a deep breath, holy shit. And like, I think it's sometimes even to go beyond saying, yeah, I'll be with you in just a second, to say like, can you see that I'm doing something right now? When I'm trying to do something like this and you're not hearing me, that I need to concentrate for just a minute, that like, it's really hard for me to not be frustrated.
I know, Dad, but I really need you.
Yeah, I know. Right. Yeah. It's like fucking brutal.
No, Dad, I need you. You got to see this.
And then like, and he's right now, Dad, you got to see this. You're like, what? And they're like, there's a butterfly on the window. You're like, gee, right now? And when they're 2, 3, this doesn't work so much. But I think the more they get to that point where they like do have a little bit of that, more developed cognitive ability to call out the dynamic, to be like, here's what's happening right now. I am getting frustrated. You don't like, it's not all about you, but I do need to do this thing. I have to do this thing. And if this keeps going this way, like I'm going to get angry. And like, that's just what's going to happen. Yeah. Because then you can make it about the set of circumstances. And it's not, my wife said a good thing. My daughter and I got into some shit the other day. And my daughter, which means I did something wrong, said, I feel like it's always my fault. Mostly they're kids. Like mostly it's their fault, but that's not true. Like it's mostly the adult's fault because you actually have agency that they don't really. Right. But anyways, she was like, I feel like it was all my fault, and it was an argument in which like she had behaved pretty poorly, and I hadn't. It was one of my better moments in a conflict we'd had, but my wife said something to her that I thought was really good. She said, it is not always your fault, but you do have a responsibility in your interactions with people. Mm-hmm. So it's not at all up to you. So I think that when you're getting annoyed with your kid and when they are doing something that is truly frustrating, if you can call out the dynamic that is happening and try to describe it, then it's not the character attack, but it's also not just fucking shoving down your reasonable feelings of frustration. Yeah. Right? Like, because then they can actually learn how to not be so frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, you need to. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually show the kids how annoying they're being, and this is when I'm like being an A+ dad. I have the time to do it. Let's say I'm trying to do something, and they're one of the things that they do that annoys me to no end is when one kid gets something, one of the other two will be like, "I want that," like, "I want the purple water cup." And it's like, you just wanted the pink one a minute ago, but because they got the purple one, what I'll do is I'll actually do a little like empathetic thing, like, I totally get it. Sometimes I see mommy like gets a nice ice cream. Like, I want that ice cream. That's a very, very normal feeling. But let me show you what it feels like to be mommy. And then I'll do this thing, if I have the time and energy, where I'll actually like act it out so that they can feel the frustration I'm feeling. Mm-hmm. I'll give them like a really cool toy or a really cool thing. I'm like, okay, guys, play with this, watch this. And they kind of like it because it's like role playing. And I'll just come in and throw a fucking tantrum on their ass. I'll be like, I want that. Give me that. I want that. I want it. And I'm like, so how did that make you feel? Like, you see, like, because that was yours. So like, but don't you see why I wanted it? So it's very normal to have those feelings. Like, I have them all the time too. But just like, learning how to read and write and do math, it's learning how to handle those feelings and wait your turn or use language to ask for it. And it's like, that's my ideal, is trying to show them how it feels, because there's this really good TikTok or Instagram going around, like talking about one of the goals of parenting is growing kids that are not annoying by the time they're like 4. So by the time that they're in preschool, like they know how to interact with other children and they're not like over the top annoying. Because if kids don't like them and they don't have good pro-social behavior, they might get ostracized in the preschool. They go to kindergarten, they might get ostracized there. You have a dinner party with 3 couples and you have the super freaking annoying kid. They're going to get subconsciously kind of black sheep stiff-armed.
Well, and teachers are people too. I mean, like, teachers are not perfect.
100%.
They don't treat every kid in the classroom the same.
Right.
Yeah. So there is an element of like, how do you train them without making them feel like shit, or without being the person that is the most important person to them in their life, telling them that they're bothering you all the time?
Well, one of the ways I've done it, and we used to do this in sales, it's a technique I made called like the totally agree technique. And it works with kids as well. And it's just a way to establish common ground and show that you're on the same team before you try to change their mind. So I would always do like whining. I can't stand when the kids whine. If they're just like, I want a yogurt, that just drives me crazy. So I'll just be like, I'll get down and be like, I totally agree. Like, I know that feeling when you want it and you just want to scream it, right? I know that feeling too. I totally agree. But that makes daddy want to fucking jump off a bridge. No, I'm kidding. No, but basically like but like, I totally get that. But like, there's a nice way to ask. Because if I want you to go to bed, does daddy say, I want you to go to sleep?
Only inside. Do I say that?
They'll be like, no, that's not nice, daddy. I'll be like, yeah. So what I say is, hey, can we all go to sleep now? Same thing. You can say, hey, can I have a yogurt now? So can you try that? Because then you can change their mind without telling them that they're a bad person or that they're like super annoying.
This is so true of adults too. You can never change anyone's mind without first validating the way that they feel and what their experience is, which is a problem in our politics and in so much of our discourse these days. Is it's just like on the attack from the beginning. I've seen some really interesting journalists recently who use an interview technique that's similar to what you're describing, that they just called radical empathy. Because so much of journalism now is like, gotcha.
Yeah.
And it fucking sucks. It's not a good way to actually like create any kind of useful dialogue. And so I've seen some people exercise this radical empathy, which is like, whatever someone says, I want to try to understand why they believe that earnestly. Mm-hmm. And it's an incredibly powerful interview technique for adults. So it's also a really good way to, because I think like what you're getting at is like when a kid is being frustrating or is being annoying, they're not doing it just to fuck with you.
No.
Or if they are doing it just to fuck with you, it's because fucking with you is the only way they feel like they can get your attention in that moment. Like there is always a reason. They want to understand and they don't. They feel like, I mean, I get this with my daughter a lot. I feel like she often feels that she has a real point to make. It's trying to hold on to that idea that when they're being annoying, they're doing it because they need something. And the reason behind what they're doing may be frustrating to you as an adult, but for a kid, that need is real. Like whatever they're feeling is really real.
I mean, even though kids annoy me all the time, it's like
constantly.
it categorically, it's one of two things. Either kids need love and attention, or they're developmentally trying to figure out how to be funny, social, whatever.
Or they can't stop them, or developmentally they can't. They literally can't help it.
Yeah, exactly. It's either a developmental thing or looking for love and attention. And it's like if a 6-month-old couldn't walk, you wouldn't yell at them like, why are you being so annoying with not walking?
It's strangely easy with babies. And I've seen that be hard for my 5-year-old, that we, like, the 11-month-old will like scratch her. And we don't get mad at that. Like, we do tell the 11-month-old, like, no, we cannot do that. But we don't get mad at her the same way we'll get mad at the 5-year-old, because it's, like, easy to remember with babies that they don't fucking know any better.
Yeah.
It's harder to remember with kids as they get older, particularly, as you said, smart kids, and particularly kids, I think, that are verbally advanced. Yeah. Because they can articulate a lot of things that they can't actually control or act on, you know?
Right. And it's very hard when it's one of those soft skills, like managing or regulating big kid emotions. If it's walking or crawling or tummy time, you're like, oh, they can't really do that yet. It's okay. We'll help you. If they're like fighting over a stupid toy, it's like, it can boil your blood, as opposed to being like, well, this is a human being that's existed for like less than 2,000 days.
Yeah. Wow.
They literally like learned how to speak a few years ago. And we're expecting them to be able to manage negotiation, acquiescence, all these like things that a lot of adults can't fucking do.
Yeah.
They're just kids. And I can't believe sometimes I can't see that.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a problem for we're not there yet, either of us, but from what I understand, this is a problem that in different ways is equally frustrating as they're teenagers, because your brain is not finished developing until you're 25.
Yep.
And when you're 18, you can verbalize a real good argument for your standpoint, but you still act like a fucking idiot a lot of the time. I mean, I definitely did.
Yeah.
It is so frustrating. And you have to hold these two seemingly contradictory things at the same time, that you want to train your kid to act better, and you yourself are fallible. And I don't think the goal is to never be annoyed with your kids. Like, they need to understand the boundaries of like how they can treat other people. So you have to be encouraging them to be their best selves, but also recognize that they can't be a lot of the time.
The reason this is so important is there's countless studies, like one in particular, the 1942 Grant study was a longitudinal study of like Harvard graduates, and they're like, what forms a good life was the main thesis question of the study. Like, one of the two main things is straight up your relationship with your parents.
It's huge.
Like, in your childhood. It's lasting for mental and physical. That shit is real, man. Kids are being annoying. If you are viewing that as like, oh, these kids are just annoying, and a lot of people react in a way of like stiff arming. If the kids are upset, get over it. That type of shit. Yeah, that has like serious lasting impacts on your relationship with them. And then guess who needs more therapy when they're in their 20s and 30s?
Yeah. I think like every parent ever is going to be annoyed with their kid in moments, frequently even. But I see this thing sometimes, and I see it in other parents, and at times, I hope never for long durations, but there are days and maybe weeks where I just see kids get treated like they're a bother. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like they're a burden and a frustration, and that like, as a parent, look, I keep them alive, I feed them, I put them to bed, I love them obviously, but like, God, like maybe when they get older. And I think that is what hurts. Everybody is going to get frustrated with their kid in moments. It is impossible not to. The question is, how long do you stay there in that feeling? How long do you stay there? Yeah. And how do you get back out?
I've been there. And I think honestly, because of this podcast, I've developed more awareness around it now that I almost view myself in third person a little bit sometimes. And I felt it last week, which is why, I hit you with the idea for this episode about frustration, annoyances, or nagging.
Yeah.
Is I just felt like everything the kids were doing was annoying me. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, I recognized it, and I only spent a day in that zone. Mm-hmm. Where everything, and I hate that about myself, is when you're like, guys, come on. Hey, buddy, cut it out. And then you realize, if you look at it in retrospect, you're like on them about everything.
Everything.
And they're not even doing anything.
Yeah.
I said, come to dinner 4 times. And they're like, dude, you said it once. I'm like,
yeah,
you're right.
I'm the asshole. Yeah.
I hate that.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think the best thing that we can do is having awareness around seeing us get in there. It's totally fine. All parents do it. But do you have the tools to recognize when you enter that nag zone? Mm-hmm. And do you have the tools, whether it's off-gassing, tapping out to your partner, going for a walk, going for a run, mm-hmm. being mindful about like thinking about the world in your life? In those moments, you have lucidity, clarity. I love my kids. I would do anything to have a good relationship with them. Of course they're not being bad here. Oh, I'm such a fucking asshole. I'm going to come back down to earth and be that great dad. I think that most of us who are listening to this would be that. The question is, how do we get so caught up in our own shit that we can't see that in the moment,
Yeah.
And that's what I want to be more present to, be more aware of that.
Yeah. And I think there's a thing that when you do get into that whatever cycle where you're looking to be, where everything they do is frustrating to you, then they do actually become more frustrating too, because they don't feel your love in the same way. You don't have as many of the positive interactions. They have needs that aren't getting met, and the connection is not there. And then, I mean, I know that like when it's not going good with me and my eldest daughter, we both start being worse to each other. You know, we're just not in a groove. I think that what has helped me is when it's going good, we have so much fucking fun.
Yeah.
It is so great.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to the point that when I get in that place where I'm just annoyed with her and she's also treating me less well, I just start to feel so bad that I'm like desperate to do anything to get out of it. And so I really start to hunt for ways to lavish love on her, or to like one of the things that I find that's really helpful to me when we're in a bad spot is to do something together in which I don't have to correct her behavior at all. To go somewhere where I'm never going to have to be like, we shouldn't climb on that. Or like, that's too loud. To just choose an activity where it's like, yes, totally. Yeah, I have plenty of time. What other questions do you have? And to put like myself in a situation where I know like we're both going to be at our best, I guess.
Yeah.
And it just takes like a little bit of that. And then I find that as soon as I can like charge that, then I start acting better, then she starts acting better. And then like she is doing less actually annoying shit. And then bedtime's easier. And then like all that stuff just builds on itself.
Yeah.
If you get stuck in that place where you're just frustrated, where it starts to just feel like the normal. And that's a drag.
I think that you have a really good awareness of it. And I'm just developing that muscle of being aware when I'm being annoyed by the kids. And to be honest, like 9 times out of 10, it is my own shit. It's like I'm ignoring them.
Yeah.
And then they will do annoying shit to try to get my attention.
Yeah.
Because they just want the love and attention, you know? The tough part is it really does take time and energy to do this correctly. Because it's not just like, don't snap at them. Mm-hmm. Because you can't just like give in and acquiesce about everything. Because then you're going to create a fucking tyrant. Mm-hmm. If they're like, Dad, I want you. And you're like, okay, you can have anything.
Yeah.
Then it's like, then you literally have no power in the relationship.
Yeah.
So it's having the time and energy to do all those right things, you know? Like,
yeah.
I think the problem is like we're so busy in life with work and, you know, keeping the house together and bills and everything.
Yeah.
You're trying to cook dinner. You're trying to do this. You're trying to use your computer. You're trying to send an email. And that's when it's like when you don't have your own shit together is when they really drive you up a wall. Mm-hmm. When really they're just either looking for love and attention or, you know, trying to figure out how this crazy world works.
If you can see what they're trying to get as valid and actually try to help them get it, then it can be a rewarding experience. It's not like that all the time. The one thing that feels like it falls slightly outside of they're just trying to understand is that human beings are kind of selfish, but like our hardwiring is kind of selfish, right? We want what we want. Mm-hmm. There's a story you told me earlier reminded me of, they did this experiment where they put 9 identical red balls in a room with 9 children, and it took them 5 minutes to start all fighting over one of them.
Yeah.
So like people are fucked up.
Yeah.
And it is, I think it is your job throughout your life to try to value the needs of other people as highly as you value your own, which is really difficult. Mm-hmm. Kids can't do that at all. And that can be annoying. I mean, that's the thing of like somebody else has it, so they want it.
Right.
Or like, you know, carry me, my legs are tired. Yeah. It's like you're not fucking tired. You're just bored and you don't want to walk this part. But as soon as we get to the playground, you're going to be sprinting up this slide.
Yeah.
It is not your job to never get frustrated when they're acting that way. I think what it is your job to do is to remember that like developmentally, this is not inappropriate. And I heard this dad talk about this. He's like, don't extrapolate too much. Don't worry that because they're being this way, they're going to be a selfish adult, right, or they're going to be a lazy adult, or they're going to be a covetous adult, or whatever it is. Just recognize they're 5, and that's a shitty behavior. But like, try to teach them that the behavior isn't going to work without carrying all the weight of like, oh my God, is my kid just a fucking prick about this?
Yeah.
Because that's when you really snap at them.
No, that's great. That's what it's all about. It's just like awareness. And just, I think the more present I can be in understanding that like, okay, This is how they are. This is like they're learning, as opposed to always holding them to such a high standard.
Yeah. And just recognize that everybody's a little bit annoying their whole life.
Yeah.
I'm annoying. Just ask my wife. I can be a little frustrating. Or ask my daughter,
Oh, my God.
And she loves me.
Yeah.
These are the people that love me.
Oh, yeah. 100%.